the meeting to order. Our first order of business is Department of Public Works. Mr. Woods, like to get started?
Good evening, committee members. For those who don't know me, I'm the director, Michael Woods. To my right is the operations manager, Jamie McGaldy, and
How you doing?
to my far left here is Joe Labeo, finance and utility manager. And we're here tonight to discuss the operations budget, which is everything except water and sewer, and then at the end we'll discuss water and sewer.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Good.
You should have in front of you, hopefully everyone got one, just a narrative. Basically outlines the entire budget, boils it down to make sense. I'm just going to basically walk through it, and feel free to ask me questions at any point.
Okay.
So just a little statement of the department. The Wilmington Department of Public Works consists of 6 divisions that are responsible for the design, operation, maintenance, inspection of town infrastructure, which includes roadways, sidewalks, town parking lots, water supply, distribution systems, drainage systems, sanitary sewer systems, trees, parks, municipal and school grounds, residential and town building trash and recyclables. Also the disposal programs for electronics and bulky items, and the maintenance of all the town's vehicles, including police and fire, and construction equipment in all our vehicles. So for proposed FY21, Public Works budget strives to keep the level of service of the residents of Wilmington that they've grown accustomed to having, while employing new technology and being fiscally responsible manner to improve the overall efficiency and safety. With that, I think we've done a great job this year in trying to keep the costs down, yet maintain at least the same level of service that we've provided the last many years. So just a breakdown on that chart on the top is the major line items, and you can see we're up 5.7 in personal services. If you just go down the page a bit, you'll see A there, personal services. That gives you an explanation on why we're up 5.7. It's basically due to 2.5% COLA due to the union contracts, and then there's other things like longevity and step increases and the like overtime that is factored into that. That's why it's not 2.5, direct correlation to the 5.7. Contractual services is everything from anything we use that we use a contractor for. Most notably, most expensive would be trash. And this year we've managed to basically level fund everything except for the increase in trash, and we did add some additional money to snow and ice, just because we seem to fall short every year with that line item.
Excuse me, on the trash side,
Yes.
has that gone out to bid yet, or?
It has.
It has.
We went out to bid, had several takers. I think it was 7 companies picked up RFPs. We got proposals, I believe, from Forjo. And Casella, who folks probably know, and who actually we bring our recycling goods to, or our current contractor brings their our recycling goods to, has gotten a letter of intent to sign a contract once we go through town meeting.
Okay.
So it'll be a 5-year contract, and it is more expensive, as we all expected.
Yeah. Now, how will that affect the trash barrel and the recycling barrel?
So we
Because that was
own,
under
the
a
town
10-year.
owns those.
Okay.
We amortize them with the past contract that we're going to stop on July 1st, over 10 years. So we still have 5 years left to amortize that, and that's included in this dollar amount you see here.
Okay.
And we'll continue to pay that, the company we currently have, Russell Disposal, for those.
Okay. That's good. Thank you.
Curious, did they bid too or no?
They did not.
Yeah.
It was mostly the big ones, the big companies.
Big companies
So
did?
the small companies are all in a state of being scared, basically, because of what's going on in trash, and especially recycling.
Just on that line, Mike, is the climate sort of settled down a little bit? It was, I know a year ago it was
not
a
at all.
little bit in
Yeah.
flux.
No. No, in fact, I would say if anything, it's probably getting worse. A lot of the other Asian companies are picking up some of the slack from China. They're now clamping down and it's really gotta come down to, the Western countries. It's not just the United States, it's Europe, it's Japan. And we need to get the recycled goods down to so clean that it's less than 0.5% contaminated. Right now, the United States runs about 22% contaminated. Wilmington runs about 17–18% contaminated, so we're doing better than average, but not good enough.
Great, thank you.
Is the new Casella gonna be more aggressive with the recycling?
They, that's what they tell us, yes, they're gonna help us with education and what have you, and we did have, the last company said they were gonna help us, but they really didn't. But we've done an awful lot in our office to get the word out. But some people just are against recycling and others just not sure. You know, there's various things like a strawberry container that's plastic that you get in the store. Everybody thinks, oh, throw that in the recycle bin, I'm doing good. Well, it's not recyclable, that's contamination, so. We're trying to get that word out, and we're gonna continue to do that.
And in this
Even if
year,
you wash it?
in this year, we have a separate line item for disposal of recycling goods, which actually will fluctuate based on the contamination rate. So we have incentive to make sure people are recycling, so we definitely appreciate the support there. When barrels do get rejected, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we pay less if we have a lower contamination rate.
Right, so one of the things that the DEP is, they've put out all these, minimally helpful, I'll put it that way, things that we can try to do to, minimize the contamination, and one of them is not to pick up barrels that are, you know, grossly contaminated with things that we specifically tell folks not to put in. So they will be stickered, and then I'll get complaints, and then I'll probably go to Jeff and up through the selectmen, I'm sure, but it's what we need to do to get this program under control.
It's kind of hard to tell until you dump it.
When they pick it up, there's a camera up there actually, and they see it, and one of the biggest contamination things is garden hoses. People throw those in there, and that's a big no-no, and apparently there's a lot of people throwing garden hoses out because we get a lot of complaints about that, plastic bags. Those are probably the two biggest things.
So
Now,
there'll be
I know
a,
some of the towns have gotten grants
Right,
to actually go in and try to curtail the recycling before it gets
Right.
picked up.
we did get the grant the first time for about 90,000, was
About
it?
80,000.
Yeah, and we bought a lot of the barrels with it. But to get the grant again, we need to have a recycling police, if you will, to go out there in advance, and we have to charge to pick up bulky items and all that type of thing. And so that you get points for all that for the grant, and those are just things that we don't do. And there's a list of other items, a couple of different, what do they call that, the contaminated pickup day when we have it in May, where you can bring all your gasoline or bad gasoline and things like that. You gotta have that twice a year, not once a year. So there'll be a number of things we'd have to do before we'd be even eligible to apply for that grant. Yeah, and it's short money, and it doesn't even pay for the employee, quite honestly. Okay. So we've kind of covered that. One other thing on the trash, we've just signed a new contract with Wheelabrator. It's for 5 years if we get approval at town meeting. First year is a 12% increase, so that's the old Neswick that a lot of you know it as, and that's where our trash goes to be incinerated up in North Andover. Back to the graph here, then we're now looking at materials and supplies, which would be page 3. So that's, you know, the maintenance items, if you will, and we're looking to essentially zero fund that. We're down a little bit, decrease of $502. We've got some extra equipment, but we've seen a pretty significant savings in gasoline with the more fuel-efficient vehicles that we're using. The Explorers are far more efficient than the old Crown Vics were, so it's showing up.
Excuse me, Mike, you've got 6 months of truck rental fees.
Okay, and that's back on trash.
Okay,
Part of the contract is it takes a year to 14 months to get new trucks. So we brought on a new company. When you sign a contract with them, that's when they order the trucks. We don't have the money to sign a contract until we go to town meeting. And the contract's for 5 years, and we need town meeting approval for anything over 3 years. So we need both town meeting approval for both funding and the 5-year contract. So we negotiated with them, instead of having to pay 12 to 14 months of rental for 3 trucks, to only pay 6. So that was cast in stone before. If it came in 10 months or it came in 16 months, we were gonna be paying $27,000 a month till that happened. So we were able to, nail that number down and commit to 6 months.
Thank you.
Still on trash real quick. You said we're at 17% contamination?
Yeah, roughly, it jumped up and down.
So the fee per ton, what, are we gonna get charged anything additional if like our contamination rate's above this 10 to 15% target? Or is it
Yes,
just
Jamie Jamie spoke to that to some degree. Our, flat fee price is based on, I believe, 10%. And for every 5% it goes above that, there's an addition to it. So, we've got, they gave us a grace period, 3-4 months.
To get down.
Try to get it
Right,
down to
okay.
the 10%. We're gonna try to get down to 15%, and then we'll try to get down to 10 as we go. It's not a big dollar amount. I think it was $1 or $1.50 a ton or something like that. We do about 2,600 tons of recycling a year. And then we did mention snow and ice was up a bit. We're just looking, to pay the contractors a little more money because everyone else is, and it's difficult to get them. And actually, we're short, and if you know anybody that's wants to plow, send them our way.
Well, what,
So, this year's been great, and don't jinx us, It's still just the beginning of February, got a long way to go. Furnishings and equipment, we're asking for about half of what we asked for last year. If you turn to the next page, you'll see we're looking for a trench box for the cemetery division with the new OSHA standards. Now that Massachusetts is part of OSHA, we need a trench box for all the graves that are dug. We need $14,000 for RRFB. Those are the flashing beacons you see up in North Wilmington at the crosswalk. It goes across Lowell Street over to Cross Street and Yentl Farm Park. We're looking for some screening at the Wildwood Cemetery to screen the garage. We're looking to do some expansion at the cemetery. One area will be adjacent to the garage on the other side of this fence, and the other section will be over by the veterans' lots. So we'll be putting those in this summer. $500 just for replacement fertilizer spreader. $16,000 for a zero-turn mower that was replacing a 2003 mower. $1,300 for ADA adaptive swing retrofits at both the Boutwell and Wildwood schools playgrounds. $800 for new torches for the mechanics. $900 for cutoff saw for the highway division. We use that to cut everything from pipe to pavement, and makes a nice neat job. And then $7,500 for partial replacement of the chain link fence at Boutwell School. That would be on the Boutwell school side. No questions? I'll move right into capital outlay. We have, the first thing we're looking to replace is one of our sweepers. It's an old mechanical sweeper. It's cost us $83,000 to repair over the last few years. It's slow, requires 2 men minimum, because you need to dump it into dump trucks, and so we prefer to use the vacuum sweepers, where it's just one man out, does his job, then dumps it at the recycling center and goes back out. There's a new requirement by EPA, as they call it NIPTES, which is non-pollution discharge elimination program. There's this MS4, which is stormwater, making it as clean as you can. So there's certainly requirements that we have put on us to sweep the streets, clean the catch basins, and I believe we have like 2,300 catch basins in town, and then maintain all these retention and detention bases you see I believe we have something like 83 of those in town. So, to manage to get some manpower back and to keep these streets swept, we want to go to something that's a little more efficient and doesn't have the amount of breakdown time that the current one has. We're looking for a one dump truck with a plow for $85,000. That'll replace a 2007 Ford with 105,000 miles. We're looking for a new six-wheel dump truck to replace H14. That'll come with a plow, not with a sander, but just a plow, and for $155,000. That'll replace a 2005 that we currently are using. We're looking for a three-quarter-ton pickup for Parks and Grounds, and that'll replace a 2004 three-quarter-ton pickup that has over 110,000 miles on it. I was just talking about that NIPT's MS4 permit. We're looking for $50,000 there. That will be to help us with laboratory work. We have to test outfalls after certain rain events and what have you for bacteria and phosphorus and some other contaminants. And also, a majority of that will be going to maintaining these retention and detention basins. They all have to be grubbed and cleaned and potentially dredged and that type of thing. We don't have that kind of equipment. It's easier to contract it out. As we move down Route 62, putting in granite curbing and sidewalks and paving and what have you, we ran into a culvert at 290 Middlesex, which is just past the cemetery, heading towards North Wilmington, and those culverts were ready to collapse. Took a look at it, looked at how to do it in-house. I had our engineering staff go through it. We figured we'd have to shut down the roadway for probably at least 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And we looked at something that MassDOT had brought to my attention to slip line it, and we can do that for about $50,000. And so we've chose to go that route, and we plan
And would the road be closed for any length of time, or just,
Pardon?
would the road be closed for any length of time, or just?
I will say not. They may have to squeeze it down, but it'll still be 2 lanes. you know.
Okay, okay.
But there'll be pits on either side, and then they just put a sleeve to
Slide it through.
basically steam it hard
Oh, nice.
and
Okay.
open it back up.
Thank you.
We've got a lot of experience with that in sewer. That's how we replace most of our sewer system as it ages. On the next page, we have traffic signal camera detection at Middlesex and High Street. You know, we've moved down with Glen Road is now on loops and what have you. Then we just did Federal and Route 62, and now that's cambered. So we're moving up to the next one at High Street, and that'll be cambered. So you don't pull up and sit there and wait 3 or 4 minutes when there's no traffic or what have you.
At
It actually
that
works by camera.
intersection, if you're on Middlesex Ave,
Yep.
heading towards 93,
Uh-huh.
and you take the left onto, again, Middlesex Ave, 125, the set of lights, the light pole on your left-hand side where Dr. Warren, Wallens,
Yep.
okay. If you're coming in the opposite direction, when the light turns green to take that left, that light turns green allegedly for the right-hand lane of 125 to take a right. But people coming in the opposite direction are taking a right onto Middlesex Ave, 125, when you're taking a left at the same time. Will that be corrected?
So you're telling me that we would need a no right turn on red heading
But-
towards 93 so that
Yeah,
you don't.
but the only thing is, they're seeing a green arrow, which is not for that lane, but it's for the lane that's 125 going on to Middlesex Ave.
Right. We'll certainly take a look at it and
Okay.
make the necessary corrections
Okay.
as needed. We'll probably do that beforehand, honestly.
Yeah,
if
it's
there's
just
a
the way,
problem
it's
there.
just the way the light is turned, that's all.
Yeah, they do turn, with the wind or truck hits them or something,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
we'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Then, continuing with our sidewalk construction, we'd hoped to do all of Shady Lane this year, but with some of the other projects, we decided to put it into 2 sections, and we need $50,000 to do the next section. Next year, we'll do the final phase, and that will bring us out to the gas station at Route 62. Where at that point, we're hoping to have all the granite and sidewalks brought from the center of town all the way to that point. Last year, we did Phase 1 of the reconstruction of the Woburn Street parking lot. This year, we'll do the second section, and then that'll wrap that up, you know, this new curbing and probably some guardrail and then bituminous overlay of the entire lot and restripe it. Spoke briefly about this a moment ago, about the expansion of the Wildwood Cemetery. We're looking to put in footings and monuments, some walkways and what have you in the Section P. That's the section over by the Veterans area out behind, up next to the stream back there. I'll put some fencing at the stream and delineate that area.
At the cemetery, a couple of years ago, we approved money for,
Columbariums?
yes.
Yep.
Have they been?
Yeah, we have 2 of them there.
Okay.
Just on the other side of the building where we keep our equipment.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Section N, as we call it, you'll see 2 granite monuments that look like there, and those are the 2 columbariums. I think we have the top row filled on 1, or sold off anyway.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And then item 11, which is gonna be actually funded by the revolving recreation department fund, is to have engineering service investigate, plan, and design essentially a new tennis court for the Shawshene School. Over the last probably 20 years, every 3 years or so, we spend about that amount of money to patch it. And then, you know, the next year, we start getting a few complaints, the second year, more complaints, and then it needs to be redone, and then we skip another year and we do it. So we've decided to just go in there and fix it correctly. So then have it engineered, have a new base put in, and then new surface, and it'll be similar to what you have like at the high school, or, you know, a nice tennis court.
That's just for the engineering services, right?
Right.
We'll be back next
So I'll be back next year with the construction costs. Which I would hazard a guess would be around $250,000. It's not gonna be cheap. So that sums up the general fund side of Public Works.
Any other questions for Mike on the general side?
Yeah, on the capital expenditures, there's a number of trucks you're buying and 2 plows. How many total trucks and plows do we have for our force, for any snow, of our own?
Not including the contractors, just ours?
Yeah, just a.
Okay, we
only
hire
one.
about 53 contractors, and do you know the number off the top of your head?
There's about 45 of our own staff,
Is it?
yeah.
Yeah, we have 126 miles of roadway, and another, 40 miles or so of sidewalk.
With 26 that can plow, yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of equipment that needs, you know, and sometimes it snows 48 hours nonstop.
Mm.
You know, it just requires a lot of equipment, and a lot of that's broken down, and, you know, we can't get behind, because then you can't push the snow, so. Or you need bigger equipment to push while you're pushing with a pickup truck, now you gotta go a bigger truck or piece of equipment, so.
And
Then
that-
all the parking lots and what have you, so.
That number 45 or so also includes double equipment, so on a night of plowing, you might have an employee in a truck, and at the end of the storm, he then has to get out of the truck and go into a tractor. So, you know, they're kind of doing double duty, rehab tractors, sidewalk plows, bobcats,
Yeah,
in addition
yeah.
to the truck that also moves.
Yeah, 'cause we're doing little things like the cemetery or the high school and things like that, so,
Do we still plow any of the churches?
yes.
Which ones?
Most of them, I think there's 3 now that we do not.
We do not plow the,
One down on
Kingdom
Aldrich
Hall
Road.
on Bridge Street and the Abundant Life Church.
Are we getting sort of hold harmless agreements from these churches that if someone slips and falls in there, or
That's above my pay scale, you'd have to.
Get the insurance binders from them.
certificate? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And,
It's-
like mileage on these trucks, like, they're being replaced, like, fairly standard for other, like, public works departments in the state? Like at 105, 110, is that about where they last?
Yeah, I mean, these aren't the 105 like on your car.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are 105 hard pushing
No,
diesel,
no,
you know, they're,
No,
they're working hard, and when you, like when they're plowing snow, 2-3 hours later, you get in that vehicle, you can smell the oil just frying and hydraulic fluids and things. It's a lot of
Make
work.
sure it's standard, and it's not,
Just-
we're
a
not
good
getting
question.
thrown into the service budget or anything.
In the case of Highway 14, which is a six-wheel dump, I don't think the mileage is listed in our memo. It's relatively low, but it's a workhorse truck and there's a lot of rot associated with it. So it might be low miles, but a lot of idling hours from patching potholes. It needs to sit idle.
And we typically end up with Sterling trucks, which in the construction world are considered throwaway trucks. You know, they're inexpensive for what they are.
Just one thing, to go back to the certificates of insurance, are those listing the town primary non-contributory and waiver subrogation?
I'll have to go back and look at them.
Okay. Thank you. All set for general? Water and sewer?
Water and sewer. Same thing, we've tried to keep the costs down while providing everything that we need to do for safe potable water supply. We're looking at personal services, a 7.9% increase, again, strictly contractual agreements with the union, the same as the other group, and we're looking at about a $76,000 plus increase annually for that. Contractual services, we're down 13.6%. If you want to look on the next page, you'll see where that money goes. The MWRA assessment for our water purchases is a big chunk of it. We were down 18.4% last year, which is what we will be billed for next year. So that's one of our largest savings. Household hazardous waste program, that's what we were talking about earlier with the trash. The state wants us to do 2 of those. We're seeing an increase, same as solid waste and recycling. To get rid of it's more expensive. To get rid of this stuff is more expensive. So we actually we went over budget this year, but looking to increase that so that we don't go over again. And then the state also, they assess us for every 1 million gallons of water we pump out of the ground to help support the DEP. It's been $8.50 since that program was implemented, probably 20 years ago. They went up to $9.50 this year, so we're seeing a bit of an increase there. Utilities, we're level funding that. That's, the bulk of that is electricity, but, some gas and propane, and then some required high-end telephone lines for our SCADA system. Now we're looking for an increase, sorry, just let me check up with the contractual service. Yeah, okay, we're good. Furnishings and equipment. Again, we're asking for less this year, $24,500 less. If you go to the next page, you will see what we're asking for. Everything is related to the water treatment plants. They're seemed like they were just built, but one went online 1980, the other one went online 1990, and a lot of the stuff in those plants is still original. So we're looking to replace an alum sulfate pump that's 30 years old for $19,500. We're looking to replace a potassium permanganate pump for $18,000. That's 15 years old. We're looking to replace the SCADA system, which is basically the software that runs the entire water system, from a computer console for $7,000. And then we're looking to replace the acid pumps, which is used for cleaning the pipes and stuff of the chemicals like lime and things like that tend to clog the pipes on a weekly basis, for $5,000, for a total of $49,500. Move on to capital. This is something that I started back in the water department in 1994, $100,000 a year, where we do actually in-house water main replacement. So all we do is buy the pipe and parts and fittings and hydrants, and then use our equipment and our manpower to get it in place. We get a great bang for the buck doing that. And in fact, this year completed a major goal of replacing all the 2-inch water main in town. Has been fully replaced. It's all done, all up to 8-inch, and it was all done in-house over the last 20 years.
Nice, that's great.
We're looking to upgrade the PLC, which is a fancy term for the computers at the Sergeant Water Treatment Plant. There's the computer system, there's a backup computer system, because if the computer goes down, the water system goes down. So there's duplication of everything, and there's a lot to it. It's not just a typical one you go buy at Best Buy. It's a lot of security involved so that people can't hack in and things like that.
That's what I was gonna ask, in terms of, cybersecurity and just, hacking prevention, obviously you can't share a whole lot, but in terms of preventative measures, do we invest in the right technologies or the right
We
systems
do
to
what, the best that they have, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing's infallible, as everyone knows, and.
And they're particularly targeted now.
Right,
Yeah.
the electric power plants and things, and both the state and the federal government require certain things for us to do. In fact, you're probably seeing here, we have actually, we didn't put it in, but we do have to spend some money on a vulnerability assessment for
Great, yeah.
the state, and
Yep.
this year I have to update it, and, yeah, we make sure of that, because we have a laptop that's, the operators, we get a call in the middle of the night, they can see what the problem is, shut things down if need be, and so we gotta keep everything.
Everyone can shut it off.
Everybody's gotta
That's
be
the problem.
tightened down, right?
Yeah, right.
I don't wanna get a call from John, I have no water. And he's just the first call of 23,000.
Thank you.
We are going to upgrade the well field at Salem Street, the 3 major wells for the side of town, after we lost the 5 on the other side of town. Would be the Salem Street, that's down behind Shea Concrete. There's 3 wells there. 2 of them were only put in maybe 12, 14 years ago, but they had an awful lot of problem with the corrosion and wells cracking, screens failing, so we've got an engineering company in that we're using money from last year, or this year's budget, told us how to make these repairs, and it cost us $750,000 to do so. So with that, Brown's Crossing, Barrows, and now Shawshene will all be
Would any of
essentially
that,
new,
would any
within
of
the
that
last 10 years.
be caused by blasting across the street?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
The theory was that it was stray electrical currents, because we do have N-stars lines going
Yeah.
above and what have you. And
Yeah.
we had it tested and probes put in the ground and all kinds of different things down there. We double and triple grounded it, and just doesn't. I don't know why. I just it's beyond me. So, and nobody else seems to know either. But we're looking at different materials to do and move the wells out of the iron pack, if you will,
Yeah.
that's in the ground, and see if that helps.
Okay. Thank you.
We're looking to replace the vacuum pump and piping in the Sergeant Water Treatment Plant that works for the Barrows Well Field. It's original plant, so again, 30 years old. That'll be $90,000. We're looking to replace a small pickup that we currently have, Water 8. It's a 2011 Ford Ranger with 106,000 miles. That's suffering a lot of rot and just getting very tired. For $43,000. The flow control valve system at the MWRA vault, which is at the Wilmington Town Line on Woburn Street. Believe it or not, that was put in 2008, so already it's obsolete, like all electronics these days, 5 years and it's done. And the cost of replacing that is $50,000. Route 38 Main Street Water Main Replacement Design, as I've talked to you about over the last probably 5 years now. We put some seed money out and got the state involved, and they're going to be rebuilding Route 38 from the center of town, Route 62, all the way to the Woburn Town Line. So bridges, including Butters Road Bridge, and the bridge that goes over the railroad tracks down by the big company on the left, whose name escapes me.
Coke Mainbury?
Past Coke,
It's a colorful logo.
yeah, there's just before you get to the septic station.
Yeah, okay.
They're gonna replace that bridge. We also wanna replace the water main, the master plan, for the last 3 master plans we've done. It suggested we put a 12-inch main all the way, down 38 we're sending it all the way to Eames Street, where we have a 12-inch main that actually Coke Membrane paid us to put in. It
Mhm.
ties over to the 16-inch that we put in on Lowell Street that ties to the MWRA line, so.
Any
That'll
idea
cost
when that
us-
might start, that project?
The state is telling us 2022. I would say sometime in the 2020s.
What, the bridge? Is that what you meant?
The bridge will be before that. So the bridge may start 21, 22, the road will start 22, 23. Trying to coordinate the Butters Road Bridge and that other bridge at the same time because they're gonna have to shut down, the trains, you know, coordinate all that, and they're looking to shut that road down, Butters Road. They may even wanna shut down 38, so, trying to confine all that chaos to about a year. They're saying, a year to 18 months, and then move in to do the roadway. Should be, big thing would be the realignment of Cross Street and you know, just lot safer trees, sidewalks all the way down.
Yeah.
Better drainage.
Certainly providing better access for the neighborhoods off of Butters Road to get over to Yentile, you know, the kids,
Exactly.
it's not particularly safe, trying to get over that bridge with bicycles or walking or whatever, get over to Yentile.
Once you get by that area too, it's not necessarily pretty, the further you get down through, so we just want to spruce it up a bit.
That's great.
On the state's time, ideally.
Plus, you'll have the construction there, the condos at the,
The Welch condos at Butters
Yeah.
Row, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked to him and we have an agreement to do some land takings will be done by the state
Mhm.
and to realign that bridge because it's gonna be a little further north than it is currently is
Okay.
when they straighten it out. And then we're looking to replace another small pickup truck that is a 2010 Ford Ranger. We're going to replace that with something along the lines of the new Ford Ranger, which is now the small trucks. And then the last thing we're gonna do is, really this is a maintenance item, it's in capital every year, but the various wells we need to clean every other year, and Shawshene Ave and Salem Street we clean this year, coming up for $55,000. Any questions on water?
How is it going to be funded, all these capital improvements? Any,
Everything as far as I know is
Through the
through
water
water
fund.
fund.
With the
Ac-
exception of, that $750,000.
Yeah, which I didn't speak on, I just remembered that would, or it's less than that, isn't it? Or the $750, and then the $275, that's the one I missed on the number 2. We built a new water storage tank on Nassau Ave. If you're at the Moores, you can look over and see, now we have 2. One real old, ugly, rusty one, and a nice brand new one. Well, we will be taking down the old rusty one, that'll be $275,000 is the estimate we've been given.
okay.
And is that gonna be bonded
That's-
also?
No, that would be through
Okay.
the water fund.
Oh, that's right, the MT.
Well, so the $750,000, you'll
It's
recall,
MTBE.
it's MTBE.
Right, so we had a lawsuit settlement over MTBE spills with the big gas companies.
Yeah.
It was a class action suit, that Salem Street Wellfield rehab will be paid for, majority of that will be paid for out of that fund.
Okay.
Right, so that'll exhaust those funds that have been just available, but we've used,
We used some, we had
Some of
about
them, but-
$1,000,000 to begin with, and we used some on Barrows Wellfield, we used some on Browns Crossing Wellfield.
Okay. Thank you.
So with that, we go to the, I guess the tiny budget with the sewer. And as I'm sure you're all aware, we're looking to go to an enterprise accounting system on sewer.
Yep.
If it passes town meeting. But we're looking at the 2.5% COLA for personal services. So that's a 5.8% increase, or $5,400. And all the other items are level funded for an increase of 2.9% on the total budget for sewer. And that is really it for Public Works. Behind that, you'll see just some data on gas uses from the department, snow uses and projections, recycling chart. The last one shows you, recycling and, yeah, recycling.
Mike, going back to the sewer system, are we still in the position where we can't expand the system?
We can expand
Or
it.
very limited?
Yeah, we're limited to the sewer districts, which you can see on the GIS maps online. And if you have a hardship or a project that can only be done by sewer and the Board of Health agrees with that, they can take it to the Water and Sewer Commission, and we have an allotment that we can divvy out, and I think we've only divvied out one, well, two actually, but then one project never made it to construction, so that's only one project that actually, I think there were only 9 houses, and what do we have, 300, 500 houses?
200 house allotment, and we've used one so far.
And then, this project that you certainly, I suspect, heard about, that Jefferson Road, if that goes forward, 108 units, apartment units, 2 buildings that are proposed there by Princeton Properties. Part of the plan there is they're going to work with the town to pursue a Mass Works grant that would allow the sewer, which ends at the North Intermediate thereabouts,
Right.
would run it down Middlesex to just about the Jefferson Road, the tracks there, and connect into that development.
Would
So
the,
North Wilmington is a sewer district.
would the houses along the way be able to hook up to that sewage?
Yes.
Anyone else have any questions for?
You know, as long as it's gravity. We haven't seen any design or,
Okay.
because they're doing all that, if they get this grant, and we'll look at it.
Yeah, 'cause you do have a slight incline at the intersection there.
Yeah, quite an incline, actually. So you have my key team here, and if you have any questions for Public Works, we'd be happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions for?
The overtime,
Yep.
you seem to be steady on that, is
We increase it by the amount of the coal, so.
okay.
Any other questions for the gentleman? No? Seeing that? Thank you. Thank you, gents.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Enjoy the
Nice
rest
to
of your
see
night.
you all. You too.
Take care.
Said you never gave me.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for January 28th. Has everyone read them, or
I have not.
you've not?
Do you have a copy?
Um, Anybody else need a copy? I think we're all set, Chris.
Great.
All set? Bernie, you all set? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Jeff, do we have any?
Yes, you had mentioned, I believe in a prior meeting, raised a question about the assessor's budget with respect to the expenditure column for fiscal 2019.
Correct, yeah.
And so I checked with Brian, and he went back and took a look, and in fact, what, as you had suggested, we were reflecting the requested amounts as opposed to the expenditure amounts. So what Christine is passing out is the revised page that actually reflects the expenditures for fiscal 2019 in the assessor's budget.
A little bit of a difference.
Mm.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions on the update?
The other question you had posed, and Brian, if you're perhaps prepared to address the questions about school choice and charter schools and so on.
I do actually have the numbers you would ask
Okay,
for.
why don't you
as
come
far
up here,
as-
Brian?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, no, we had discussed as far as charter schools, the Essex Technical
Yeah.
School, and school choice, just as trying to get some figures for a baseline.
Okay.
I talked to Paul Ruggiero
Yep.
over at schools back in the beginning of January, so he didn't have figures for the current school year.
Okay.
So we're looking at about 2 years back compared to basically what we're looking at for the budget here. School choice, his comment was that Wilmington does not participate by allowing students from other districts to essentially choice into Wilmington. However, there were 3 students who were Wilmington residents that had participated in the program at various costs. There's differing charges for each student just based on their ed plan.
Okay.
Without getting into any details that
Okay.
I'm not even, obviously,
But were they in an IEP?
there was some sort of special education component to a couple of them, so
Okay.
that's all that I know, and
Okay.
that's all that I need to know.
Yeah, that's all we need to do.
Exactly. So that obviously does increase the
Yep.
rate on that piece of it. Charter schools, there were 5 projected for FY '20. For town residents who attended charter schools. In FY '19, they had 5 students as well.
Mhm.
So those rates have been fairly consistent as well. I think it was 76,000 in '19 and about 80,000 in FY '20. For Essex Technical School, they had 8 students in FY '19 attending that school, and that doesn't include, there's a couple as well that attended the Minuteman Tech that we had talked about briefly
Yeah.
as well, so. In those numbers, they believe are gonna be roughly consistent. Obviously, there's some sort of obviously, kids graduate out, new kids enroll
Yeah,
in
new
there.
kids go in.
So there's some sort of turnover, but as best they can speculate, that assume that's gonna remain fairly constant.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. Any questions for Brian? Seeing none?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Jeff, anything, anything?
I think that was it from our last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mary, do you have a comment, or?
Yeah, any, new petition articles come in? No,
Well, we
we're
did,
fast
in fact,
approaching.
we did have an article today that came in. I have not had an opportunity to review it in detail, but a petition article came in to raise and appropriate $12,650,000 from free cash to use for the purposes of preliminary design construction of a senior center. So from best I can speculate, I guess, if you recall, the numbers that I had put forward for the purposes of a budget was $650,000 to engage in a feasibility study and schematic design, which would then bring us to a point where we could get a cost estimate for a building based upon square footage and design and so on. The rough estimate, and it was an estimate based upon a discussion I had with an architectural firm had used in the past, was that it would be approximately $12 million, but again, it all depends upon the size and all the design features and so on. So from what I gather, those two numbers were combined, and that was been put forward as a petition article.
Who's the petitioner?
Any sort of location for that?
Here, Glen Road.
So it's specific to this site?
That's my understanding. Again, I haven't had a chance to review it in detail, just came in today, but, yes, Selectman McCoy was, at least one of the proponents.
Interesting, to say the least.
Yes.
And this is just a guesstimate, this 12.6 as far as conversation you had with an architectural firm.
Right, so when I had the conversation, I, indicated that based upon the Cecil, plan, with the facilities plan, at the time, the suggestion was that a facility, in the range of 14 to 16,000 square feet would be appropriate, and it was really based upon, their review of other senior centers in other communities. The range is, even greater than that, but, that was what they were suggesting would seem to be appropriate for a senior center in, Wilmington. So when I had the conversation, I indicated that we would perhaps be looking at a facility something in the order of 14 to 16,000. The person I was talking to their firm had done some work in other communities on senior centers. Newton, I think, in fact, is one of their, one of the communities they're working in, and so that was their best judgment as to what it would cost, $650,000 for the schematic design and the feasibility, and also we're required under the procurement law to hire an owner's project manager for any building projects over $1.5 million in total. They're essentially the town's agent that oversees the design and construction. So all of those costs would be included in that $650,000, and then again, that $12 million was really just a rough estimate based upon,
So we have no
today's
idea
rates.
how much a senior center will cost?
No, I mean, clearly, one of the reasons why I was suggesting we segment this is that we get a schematic design, have the
Figure out where it's
features,
going.
and
Yeah.
then get a quote for an estimated construction cost at that point, and then go through the bid process. Clearly with the not knowing all the features, how many rooms, how it's, the HVAC
Right.
system, all those kind of things.
What
It's
they
really-
find when they dig the footprint.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, and that's the other
Right.
piece, because,
That's
we
big.
don't have when I was proposing it, I didn't have a particular site, so
Mhm.
one of the things that the architect would help us with is taking a look at perhaps 3 or 4 sites, and then ultimately, once the town came down to one, then they could go,
Mhm.
specifically look at the geotech and all the associated site issues there.
Jeff,
Yeah.
can you get in a little bit more detail, just so everybody knows? As far as these studies go, what do they entail? Do they entail, will we be shovel-ready for construction once all the studies are done? Is it from soup to nuts and then construction, the cost of the studies themselves?
So the studies themselves, in the case of the senior center, the $650,000, that will, we would hire a designer, architect. Typically it's an architect or an engineer, but more often than not an architect, that would help us to identify the preferred site for a senior center. And then once that site is identified, they would look at the particular features. Is there a ledge that we need to be aware of? Is there a high water table? Whatever those site issues are. And then they would literally develop a design for this building, obviously based upon input from the town, and it would include everything from the number of floors to the number of rooms, square feet per room, heating and cooling and all the other infrastructure, so to speak, of a building. And then once all that is put together, they would, based upon the construction costs at that point in time, give us an estimated cost for construction. So in the case of the senior center, I think it's reasonable to believe if we were to get approval at town meeting and we put bids out and we're able to get the OPM and the designer on in July, thereabouts, we could be in a position for the next town meeting to bring a budgeted amount forward for the actual construction. The same would hold true for a school town hall facility. They would do the same thing. The expectation on that is that the timeline for that work, because the building, the estimated square footage is about 42,000 square feet. The estimate I'm given there is it would take about 20 months to go through that whole process, so we would not be in a position at the 2021 town meeting to pursue construction.
Jeff, the master plan, didn't that suggest that the senior center be here at this location?
Yes, so it had recommended that the senior center be here, that the town school admin building be where the senior center is. The intent, and it's it's to some measure subjective, obviously, but I think the sense of the facilities committee was that the idea of creating a civic center where you have some of your more prominent government buildings, library in this case, perhaps a town hall, school admin building. I know there was some discussion at the time in dealing with the school department that they liked the idea of being across the common from the school, and so some of those points went into that idea. I mean, at the end of the day, that may not be where things play out, but that was the idea.
Now, this petition only looked for the 12.6 to come from free cash with no mention of how the relocation of this building to
That's
there
right.
was going to be?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an
It's
open
a lot
question for me.
That's pretty bad.
Just confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would expect that if the building was gonna go on this site, we'd have to eliminate the fields in the back.
That's right.
I don't know how else you could do it. I mean, presumably we would still be operating here, for some period of time, so, yeah. I
So
don't
we
know.
would actually lose the fields in the back, because you would have to build the senior center out in the football fields. Then we would be up against the wall to go find space for new football fields.
Yeah, I mean, so clearly these fields would be, taken offline, so to speak,
not
as well
even-
as the baseball. I mean,
The
they play baseball
softball
here.
and baseball,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
That
big,
too.
Yeah, so I don't know what the vision was in terms of that whole piece, but I guess we'll find out.
Seems to be costing us more money than anything, with the prelim of
Yeah, I mean, I think there's clearly a desire amongst many in the community to do this now, ASAP, which, I can appreciate. Many in the senior community have, spent money on other buildings, the public safety building, the middle school, the high school, and so I can, I get it. There's a desire to focus on them. There's more than one way of doing that, and
That's right.
my preference is to take a graduated approach.
Oh,
So
it should,
let
it
me-
should, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask you something, if we were to do the 650 study, we'd have to do that at the beginning anyways, before we could even do construction. So what
Right.
would, the timeline would probably be the same, whether, we go out next year to get the capital spending approved at town meeting.
Right.
So I don't understand why we would have to do the 12.6 now. It's the
Yeah,
same
it's a-
timeframe.
You make a good
Yeah.
point, because we're still gonna have to go through the same procurement process. The
Right.
first step in the
Right.
process, you hire an
Yeah.
OPM, you hire a designer. You have to go through all that process. It's, the downside, in my estimation, is that, when the designer, ultimately develops the estimated cost for that project, if it isn't the amount that they have available, we have to go back to town meeting, I guess, or at least curtail the
It
project.
needs to be done in a logical progression.
Yes.
And it doesn't
Yep.
seem to be,
Yes.
You need to have
um,
the knowns and unknowns.
That's
yeah,
right.
and there's a lot.
There's a lot
of
with
that.
this
Yeah.
particular, trying to do
Yeah.
this particular petition.
Yeah.
How else would you have sort of a rational conversation if there's too many variables?
Right.
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
I mean, quite frankly, the other issue I'm concerned about is the idea of taking the full amount for this project from free cash. I know there's been a lot of discussion about, we have $24 million in free cash, we have $14 million in capital stabilization, why not use it? But, when you look at the number of projects we have, just on the school side alone, let alone some of the municipal, and the costs associated with those, there needs to be, in my estimation, a measured, deliberate approach to using free cash.
Also, wouldn't it have a negative effect on the town with the bonding agencies?
Yeah, what's the reserve I thought was
Yeah,
like
what's that going
10%
to
so that would
to
get
our
us
bond rating?
close.
And it's going to cost us more money in the long run when we do
That's
go to,
right, for borrowing.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially
So-
deplete our reserve.
yeah, I mean, that's not a good idea. At all.
And, I think there's been some discussion about the assumption that we are gonna regenerate $4 or $5 million every year in free cash, and, that's a dangerous assumption, because,
That's right.
there is going to be a point in time, and I think we're seeing it to some measure, where things are gonna slow down. We're not gonna sell the number of motor vehicles, so the excise revenue is gonna tail off, new growth is gonna tail off.
Not for anything, look at the figures that were presented at the last meeting by the building inspector.
They were done
Right.
by half.
They were down considerably,
Right.
And if that continues, you're absolutely right. We're not gonna have that income in free cash,
Right.
No.
So,
And our expenses are going to be going up, on the personnel side with the contracts.
right,
We're already locked into them for at least 3 years,
yeah.
so. So you're gonna have decreasing revenue and increased expenses.
So was it? I guess I know I do understand you said you didn't really get into it. Yeah, was this petition focused on both doing the entire thing for free cash and bonding none of it and moving the timeline up?
I've not had a chance
Okay.
to read it in detail, but just from what Beverly in the office told me, it appears that it's looking to take the full amount from free cash, no borrowing whatsoever. So,
But to move the timeline up, you're not going to.
Yeah.
yeah, it didn't really,
Yeah.
it
You can't
doesn't,
physically do that,
It
yeah.
doesn't.
yeah,
No.
it doesn't
It's not
speak to
gonna
the
work.
time
It's
frame,
not
but.
gonna work.
Try to push through this amount without even
Yeah.
having a good idea of what it would actually cost. It doesn't accomplish anything by moving up the time. It doesn't
No,
move the
I-
timeline up.
I don't think there's gonna be any savings,
No.
that way.
There's gonna be a plan,
In-
and
in
the
place.
manager of the town is the person that, puts that plan together. We can have petitions, but basically, you've gotta start with a plan, what you're gonna do. The first thing that we have to do is exactly what
That's
Jeff
right.
is doing.
Yeah.
Is getting a feasibility study, which is necessary. And if you went to any other town or any other
They do.
city, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
So, I'm not quite sure what, Mr. McCoy is,
Thinking on this at all, I don't know.
but,
He had made that point clear at the joint committee with the selectmen too, though, that he
Yeah.
wanted to use free cash for it.
right,
Right.
well, that may not
Rather
be a
short-sighted.
financially, sound.
Short-sighted,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Right.
Well, and you just be bonding more of the other projects that we need to do.
Exactly.
So
At a higher rate.
Yeah, so the net
At a
effect-
higher rate,
yeah,
'cause
the
we
net
just
effect on
depleted
taxes
every
would be the same.
rate.
Yeah, so,
Mhm.
It might make some people feel better that
Exactly, yeah.
There's just a different question, I forgot to ask the other night, any update on Textron?
Yeah, how's that going?
There's been no update of late. In fact, I sent an email to this gentleman that I've been dealing with, communicating with every month or two, Al Kazaza. He's out of the Providence office in their real estate office, and we're supposed to talk tomorrow, but you know, I check in with him every couple of months. And the last time I talked to him, they were still not sure what they wanted to do with the facility. They, I guess, have other sites that they're working on that seem to be higher up on the priority list in terms of identifying what they would like to do. I've talked to them about the prospect of acquiring the piece of property that has the tennis courts and the ball fields, and their desire is to keep everything as a whole. So if they do put it on the market, they would
Please
have
bring
everything.
some goats and let them roam around.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, what I was interested in, what Mr. Woods was talking about, some of the other projects going there, you can start to see the sort of convergence of all these projects, all this activity in that area.
Right.
And if that sort of fell into our lap at some point, that really changes, I think, the dynamics of being able to connect a lot of different things and really
Right.
kind of expand that space.
Yeah, and I've mentioned that several times when I've talked to Mr. Kazaza, and he, I think he's been out to the property. He understands, you know, that there's the opportunity for that connection with Yentile, and literally we could connect the two pieces if we were able to purchase it. You know, we've also, in some of my prior conversations, I've indicated to him that, you know, the town views that piece of property on the other side of Maple Meadow, you know, as really an opportunity. If Textron decides to relocate to another place in town or elsewhere, you know, we'd like the opportunity to meet with them and talk about perhaps the prospect, if they think it would be more valuable to them to rezone it maybe as a mixed-use space, and certainly would be advantageous to the town if we could
There's our
do
fields.
something there.
There's the fields we lose from here,
Yeah.
potentially.
But I'm thinking also just in terms of the campus itself,
Yeah.
there's some real opportunities there.
Mhm.
That's a 60-some-odd acre
Right.
piece of property. You know, I think one of the unknowns, and I know one of the issues they've expressed some concerns about is, in the past, is in the buildings, there's a lot of asbestos issues, so that becomes an issue for them in terms of who they sell it to, and then, you know, hopefully, I don't know to what
Let's
degree
hope they
that.
don't miss the market.
Yeah, I know.
And is there contamination on it?
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
we don't know, but
Mhm.
it's certainly possible.
Yeah, plus you have a portion of it wetlands too.
Yeah.
Right,
You know, so-
yeah.
Big-
Yeah. Excellent. Any other questions?
But it's probably its best, or highest value is if it stays industrial, isn't it?
You know, I don't know. I think there's, you know, a mixed use type of opportunity, you know, maybe not on the scale of Third Street or the place there in Linfield, can't think of the name of it, but.
Oh, Market.
Market.
Marketplace.
Yeah, Marketplace,
Yeah.
something like that, I think, you know, would be a potential opportunity. Obviously, you know, traffic would have to be really addressed there, because we wouldn't want traffic emptying out onto Woburn Street necessarily, but,
I don't know, the days of building shopping centers, to me, is gone.
well, you know, it's, one of the things that
Mm.
we learned when we had the 38 corridor study done, and it seems to make sense to me anyways, is that people, certainly the online business has really affected the store, you know, the storefront type of operation, but people are more into experiential things, like, and I'll use myself as an example. My wife and I, another couple, went up to North Andover a few weeks ago to
Taste Buds.
Taste Buds.
Mhm.
So it's a place where you can go, and they have cooks, women that are into the cooking, and they teach you how to make a particular meal. You know, those kinds of things, whether it's wine pairing, all these kinds of experiential types of things, we were told from the consultant that looked at 38, that's what people are into today. Not so much, you buy a pair of shoes or whatever. You can buy a lot of stuff online, but you can't get that experiential type stuff online.
It's amazing how many there are out there,
Yeah.
to do, either wine or food or whatever. I think it's great.
And I would suspect, I don't know, that there would be some market for that in Wilmington. People looking
Mhm.
to have access to some of those types of opportunities. I'm sure there's others that I'm not thinking of, but.
Any other questions for Jeff or Kerry or Ryan? No? Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Enjoy the
you.
rest of your night. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned. We're out of here.